Welcome back to another episode of the Deductionist Podcast, my lords, ladies and gentlemen. How are you doing? How's your world? Hope it's awesome. Hope you are having a wonderful day. Thanks to everyone that's tuning in live. It's great to see you already, kind of, because I can only see your names and profile pictures. So it's not really a meeting. It's a kind of meeting, but it's not. But it will do for now. Until, some clever git invents teleportation or somewhere around those lines. And so today we're going to be looking at the notion of mindset within the realm of the deductionist skill set. It's arguably, and I am one of the people that would argue for this, the most important thing that you could work on. Right? The most important thing. Because your skills, though they will support what it is that you do, and what it is that you see, and what it is that you observe, it is your mindset that would allow that to flourish. Right? It is akin to those people who have been going to the same gym for the last 30 years, and then when they get up one day, all of a sudden they cannot be bothered. Yes, I do know your face, Mr. Jane, and I can. I even know Board's face as well. I can imagine you, but it's a little weird. It's a little weird to be functioning with an imaginary crowd. I'd much rather see you, but this doesn't allow for it, and I'm still talking about it. So we're going to move on. That's the purpose of this. And it's around that old concept of empathy and emotion, and its benefit in one area and its harm in another. And it's something that I've been working on, as you guys know, for many years, because with it being emotion and with it being mindset, it is individual, it is idiosyncratic to every other person that wants to work on it, right? And so that's a lot of people. So there, with more so than anything with this, there will never be a one size fits all. Never. Nor should there be. It's emotion, right? But pursuant to what it is that we're trying to do with developing these skills, there are times to lean into it, and there are times to not lean into it. And those are some of the things that we're going to get into. Because the only thing that I hear people who are advocates of empathy talk about, and please bear in mind that I'm about to be really semantic. So it's taking lots and lots and lots and lots of things to try and squish it down to an idea. And if this idea doesn't connect to you and you're an advocate of empathy, it's probably because I've not spoken to you on it. um, it has ties towards social bonding and relational development and teamwork and all of these other strengths that come along with the foundations of building any understanding of an individual. But in the use of empathy, it also comes with side effects, the loss of self, burnout, to name two very important ones, because it is about feeling things that the other person does, right? Again, very broad as a definition of precisely what empathy is. And all we are saying here is that the use of it and the potential harm or benefits that come out tend to make it to be, I'm one of these go dancing through a field of wheat, tree hugging, spiritually driven individuals, or you're cold as ice, right? You are inclined to be one or the other, and it might change for your roles throughout the day, it might change for the people that you meet, but it's pushed towards this or this, which has led to this understanding that it is wise for individuals to develop an off switch or an on switch, depending upon what it is that you're trying to turn off or on. When it's much more of a prudent skill to develop a dial of sorts. to know what the situation needs. And I've been looking at this for a while, and we'll get into some of the tactics around it. And it seems to boil down to a question around proving that you care, right? And it might be with the most noblest intentions and the most purest, wonderful intentions that there's ever been. But it seems to come down to that idea whether the other person, people, or situation needs you to prove that you care, or you want to prove that you care. The question should be asked for what we do in this area is, do you need to prove it? Right? What does the use of empathy get you in this situation? Yes, it gets you all this connectivity, this understanding, this rapport, yada yada, all those wonderful things. But it comes with the downsides as well. As we get into it, this rational approach to compassion, this tactical approach to the use of understanding rather than feeling, gets you all of those same things without the loss of self, as it nurtures control through this dial element, right? Oh, comments coming in already. Let's have a look. Mr. Jane, I think I don't use empathy. I use psychology as a way to understand the person. It helps me to act accordingly better than empathy. Not necessarily psychology in that situation. That's just compassion. It's the virtue of compassion. It is just looking to understand. That's it. The situation of whether you need to prove that you care, or they need you to prove that you care, doesn't need that. All you need is an understanding. That is it, specific to this. So we'll get into a few practices around that, namely that observation begins with curiosity, not emotional projection. Right? If you look at the scientific background of it, curiosity activates the hippocampus and the reward system, if you want to think of it that way. It primes your brain for attention and for learning. Mr. Holmes was quoted as saying, "The world is full of obvious things which nobody by any chance ever observes." Curiosity nurtures that. It's a good starting point. Does that require empathy? Nope. Does that require any emotion, really? Other than whatever it is that comes together to nurture your curiosity. There is a wonderful book on this topic that I keep coming back to. It's called Against Empathy from Paul Bloom. One of the things that connects to this idea about the obvious practices that nobody by any chance ever observes is emotions and emotional empathy. It narrows focus to the feelings of individuals, right? So if you're stuck in a situation where you're saying, well, I mean, it happens a lot in political discussions as well. Person X, regardless of their belief, person X is saying whatever they're saying. Person Y is saying, I don't care because of so essentially there is not listening going on either way. Nurturing curiosity allows the information and the other people to give you more, to show you more, which for us in our roles is infinitely helpful. I don't have to feel either side for that to happen, right? Curiosity is it's rather a way to expand attention to context, to causes, to the systems that link it all together, right? Seneca would say we suffer more in imagination than in reality. Right? Curiosity frees you from assumed emotional narratives that may distort your judgment. So if we're looking at it purely from a Sherlockian standpoint, curiosity can replace assumption with investigation. because empathy has its roots in assumption, because it's born of feelings which are of narrowed personal circumstance and are rigid. You don't feel for the subject, you just analyze the whole scene. Instead, you don't feel for the situation, you analyze the person, right? Interesting topic. Thank you, Genius 1000. It also boils down to emotional and cognitive empathy. Absolutely. I think empathy helps us to understand how we would feel if we were the other person in the same context, not how the person feels. Nice. Okay. All I'm saying here, and these are wonderful points, by the way, and I don't disagree with any of them. This is why I'm saying it's better. It's more productive for us as deduction, whatever you want to call it, observers. It's more productive for us as observers to understand that we can function as a dial. Because even though we aren't robots with this on off switch, oh, I need to develop an off switch for my emotions. Good luck. Right? But developing factors that can dial your rational focus one way or the other is infinitely beneficial for this particular discipline that we're trying to work on. Yoga. I find it very useful to analyze how the individual relates to the environment and circumstances to predict outcomes in their behavior. Nice. Nice. And it's moving with that curiosity gets you and empathy closes down. Because you're moving alongside this, well, you're in the same shoes as the individual. There is no objectivity that connects to that, right? Emotional detachment, it clarifies the signal from the noise. And detachment is a big word in that scenario. It's carrying a lot of weight. It doesn't mean detached as in disconnected, disconnected, unfeeling, whatever way you want to apply an appropriate synonym there. Detached is an awareness. I'm aware of these things that are happening. They don't require my involvement inside of it, right? Emotional empathy activates the anterior insula and the amygdala, right? It leads to affective bias. Cognitive empathy engages the prefrontal cortex, promoting objectivity, right? So this is the key. Mr. Holmes quoted as saying, "It is of the first importance not to allow your judgment to be biased by personal qualities." Personal qualities is a field that empathy holds to itself. It has its use, but in this particular field of understanding and communication and development of information that we observe, no. Right? Empathy overload, it creates distress, impairs reasoning, especially in complex or morally grey situations. If you've watched any kind of what's a popular version? Um, any kind of these online debates that get into these areas where some people have fixed views or this way, some people have fixed views this way, and then there is the grey area in the middle where the people try and jump into in order to try and convert or change or get the other person to admit defeat, whatever it is. Leaning too much into the emotive empathy, you lose track of rationale. That's when lashing out happens. That's when moving goalposts happens. That's when confirmation biases pop up. That's when anchoring pop. All of these other elements are connected to an emotional output, or rather an input, right? If you are pained by external things, it's not that they disturb you, but your own judgment of them, Mr. Aurelius. Right? So think of it that way, that empathy is a way for outside bad thinking to affect you. It's not the only way, but that is a way. Detachment, it lets you see patterns, not just pain. Because you can see patterns in the pain, you remain useful, not overwhelmed. Come here. Come here. Dog's truffling for parts of Gabe's food. Cheeky monkey. Right? You see my point? And the beneficial side of this is there are ways to train emotional control. It's through leaning into it. Leaning into the difficulty, leaning into the discomfort. Right? One of the things that I'm looking to lean into in my TED talk that's coming up, which if you didn't know, I have a TEDx talk coming up. You'll all be able to see it online towards the end of May. But if you think about it, a a memory isn't treasured because it was stored effectively on a cloud, or your deductions and inductions coming true, the joy of knowing you made a pretty solid observation isn't brought about through chat GPT. It's brought about through your own difficulty. It's brought about through your own hard work, through your own blood, sweat, and tears, learning to control all of that in the moment in order to make your observations, right? So the importance of that is about learning to navigate the control of your emotion that you need to do what you do, that's born of challenge, which is why the dial is more of a beneficial property there. Mr. Jane, is that question for me or Yargo? Because you guys have a bit of a conversation going back and forth. If it's for me, I'll answer it. If it's not, Yargo can. We'll move on. So, let's move into the confines and the realms and the rabbit holes. Okay. I saw four for you come up. So I'll put that on. So, as an observer, why do you think people would talk about being empathetic all the time or act with empathy all the time? Uh, 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 Again, I can give you a rule of thumb. I can give you a rule of thumb, and it won't apply to all because, as you yourself pointed out in the chat, there are 8 billion of us. So, for me to try and answer that as everyone that talks about being empathetic all the time or acts with empathy all the time is such a sweeping generalization. But if you think about the reliant properties of why somebody would do that, there is a degree of homeostasis to it. It provides them comfort in some way. And most of the times, what happens when you look at the metronomic qualities of somebody who is connected to at least attempts to be empathetic or lead with empathy first, always, it normally comes from a place of pain, because that's the thing, the vehicle, the tool that they had to use to get themselves through it. They had to open themselves up to more in order to understand. Right? So if they are reliant on feelings so much, what is the other side of that? It is a lack of. And then you look at the interplay of nature, nurture, and societal and social angles, and it will give you a lot of information to work with in the moment. Just as somebody, the other side, who relies on being emotionless all the time. 9 times out of 10, it's because they've had their emotions, their empathetic moments, struck down with so much pain that it's led to closing off and not going towards that anymore. Right? This is the kind of trade-off there. Anyway, um, neuroscience, mentalizing. No, it's not mind reading. Mentalizing. It is a way to make you more accurate. Mentalizing is it's the theory of the mind, or rather, theory of mind. It uses the medial prefrontal cortex and the temporoparietal junction. It is the axis that contains the pathways that give us an ability to infer motives, not just mimic emotions, right? It is the well, again, one could argue that it is the neurological origin of you see, but you do not observe. Right? Empathy is biased towards similarity. We empathize more with those who look or sound like us. Mentalizing is a way to bypass this bias. And if you want, we can go into mentalizing in a different episode because it's fascinating. If you are of this persuasion and a dork, but it's a branch of neuroscience work. So there's a bunch of other stuff out there that you can pull and go and look into. Here we go. So one example could be an abused woman who tends people, listens to them, helps them when she grows up. 100%, mate. 100%. Aaron, spot on. It could be. Yeah, it could be. It could be virtue signaling a moral grandstand as well. 100%. 100% it could. That's why in those moments it's for me to properly answer that question, I have to take every context that there is, was, and ever will be and provide an answer to it. But, having a rule of thumb, as in this or this, or the way that the metronome swings back in certain areas, or virtue signaling, or Mr. Jane's example, what we learn from mentalizing in this way is if you are more, how can I phrase this? If you are more empathetic towards those examples, then you are guided by feelings and attachment, and you're more likely to bias your viewpoint in terms of seeing them all as virtue signaling, moral grandstanding, somebody who tends to people because it comes from a place of pain. Right? Do you see my point? This is the notion of the way empathy can, and I'm being very specific about my words, empathy can bias you, right? The mentalizing process is a way to just open it out to all of the other possibilities. Well, I say all of the other possibilities, just more possibilities than immediately occurs to you in that particular moment, because you're not led by the warmth of recognition that emotion brings, right? Um, yeah, that was a long sentence. I was about to keep going. Well, I am going to keep going. I'm not just going to stop the podcast mid sentence. Um, Aurelius was known as saying, "A man's worth is no greater than the worth of his ambitions." You focus essentially as humans. He was saying, focus on motives, not moods. For us in this situation as the observers, we can think of it as what motivated the mood. So we're still putting the motive as the higher priority because it gives rise to the mood and provides more information for us to work with in that particular situation. So from a Sherlockian benefit, understanding behavior from intent, not emotion, it increases the accuracy, or rather the likelihood of accuracy, for your readings, your predictions, your inferences, your observations, whatever word you want to use, right? And the reason I say likelihood is because there are a bunch of other factors that go into it, right? Just because you've heard a few ideas for emotional control does not mean you have emotional control, right? I've been working on it for, I don't know, 20 years now. I wouldn't say I have total emotional control, like at all. I would say I have pretty good emotional control in a lot of areas, But there are certain things that you know piss me off without thinking, or leave me overjoyed without thinking, and in the moment, that can harm my effectiveness as a reader of people, right? I know there are some people that loathe that terminology because it connects back to body language and people can't be read like books, blah blah blah. Right? That's just a word. Right? That's all I'm using it as. It's an illustration. I'm basically too lazy to think of a more appropriate one in this scenario. Moving on. Regulated emotion enables pattern recognition. The prefrontal cortex, it governs top-down control over emotional response, which is a way to support memory and analytical thinking. Holmes quoted as saying, "The little things are infinitely the most important." Right? If you can regulate your emotions in a moment, you come back to the better suited patterns that connect to what it is that you're doing. Why is it when you think that you're having an argument that somebody asks you to calm down in order for them to understand? Right? Because there's a higher likelihood of you being able to do that. Not necessarily agree, but there's a higher likelihood of you being able to understand when the emotions are regulated. Mr. Bloom was quoted as, well, not quoted as saying, there was a point that he made, um, that there was a point that he made, unregulated empathy. It blurs distinctions, right? It pulls toward who is suffering, not why they are suffering or what else is happening. Think about it, right? If you take pretty much any doctor who works on very sick people, if they aren't able to regulate their emotions, they are screwed. They are screwed, right? Which is why, I mean, again, you see it in police work. You can't work on cases that you're too close to because of this possibility of unregulated emotions, or all of these types of things. It's because it is your ability to think that allows you access to the information that you need to work with in the situation, right? So, would I want a doctor that is empathy driven? No. God, no. Right? Understanding, great. Pleasant, awesome. Nice to be around, brilliant. But I want them making decisions that I am unfit to. Right? That's the way I get my effective healthcare. And again, I keep coming back to it, and I know for a point that there are people that are going to be sick of me waffling on about it, but just read a bit of Epictetus. It's very dry if you're not into the topic. It's very dry, but just a bit, because there are these little nuggets that fall out. Like, no man is free who is not master of himself. Right? Uh, yeah, there we go. Uh, um, I mean, I'll come back to Epictetus in a sec, but I've just seen the comment. Yes, I love that. Regulated emotion allows for clear. 100% it does, Aaron. Um, exactly, board. That's why they are infinitely the most important. Imagine you're about to have a heart surgery, and in the middle of it, your doctor starts crying. I mean, exactly, right? There was um there was a photo that I saw. It was a real brutal photo. Um, it was of a surgeon in America. Um, and when I saw the photo, it wasn't time stamped, so I don't know when it was. But it was a real photo. It was in the newspapers and all this type of thing. And the poor guy had to walk outside, and he was kind of squatting down in like a sumo squat position, hands up on the railing, bawling, bawling his eyes out, because a patient had died on the table. And though it wasn't written about in sorry, it wasn't depicted in photographs. It was written about that he then, in order to go back in and do his job, he had to stand up, kind of dust himself off, wipe his face, and go back in. That is a fucking horrible situation to be. Horrible situation to be in. But for him now to go back in and be the most effective doctor that he can be, he needs to regulate his emotions. I don't know what happened after because it wasn't written about, and I didn't look further. Maybe he got sent home. Maybe he was able to regulate his emotions. I don't know, but that as a concept, that as an idea, if he can't regulate, he can't think. And that's the same property that empathy has. It has wonderful parts, but it comes with this downside if it's not regulated. That's why this rational cognitive property towards your ability to think is much better suited towards these particular disciplines than being led feelings first. Right? Epictetus is what I was talking about. No man is free who is not master of himself. Essentially, the ability to pause and regulate. Powerful. That's why things like Hick's law are so alluring. To just keep going, what about this? 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 And nothing's ever done on the side note because there are a bunch of other things that you can see. Awesome. Right? How do you know what's there? You pause, regulate, and go forward. Right? It's like him or lump him. John Cleese talks about creativity in a wonderful way, and that creativity is hurt by those who are feared of being wrong. Right? You might think you've had the most wonderfully creative idea, but the only way you know is to show people. Right? The bit before you show people, that's the pause, that's the regulation, which either stops people or allows them to flourish. You see it here in people who are just not, well, what if I'm wrong? I've seen all of this, and what if I'm wrong? And then they realize that they're just doing this. You stop to pause. Focus on whether you can or can't regulate that emotion. And if you can't, move on. If you can, move forward. Right? With this in mind, you don't just see behaviors, you link them. Pattern recognition requires stillness, not sympathy, not empathy. Excuse me. Mr. Jane, I realize something about myself. If I can't explain why I feel the emotion or why I react to the situation, that means I didn't regulate the emotion. I don't use my logic at that moment. That might be 100% true for you. And if that is, I'm glad that you came to that realization, mate. It's a big position to be in. Oh, Aaron, composure is a characteristic of a leader. In an emergency, folks aren't going to run to the person freaking out and crying. Absolutely, they'll go to the level-headed person who's thinking clearly. Spot on. Spot on. Right, and that's what we want for our work. If we are developing this observational practice of simply being able to notice everything that's around us and reasoning information from it, that level head, that degree of composure is what you want. And that's what you want. We all slip. We all become emotional. It happens. We're human. But that's why we learn to regulate those areas. Right? In every work of genius, we recognize our own rejected thoughts. They come back to us with a certain alienated majesty. Emerson. How could you know if you're a genius without showing it? Is that a question that you've tacked on, or is that a different part of Emerson's work? And by Emerson, do you mean Ralph Waldo Emerson? It sounds like him, but I don't know for sure. I'll leave that with you. Let you kind of feed back in. And this will be the final thing. This will be the final thing I'll say. If we were to lean in more into compassion, to understanding, right? It is concern, but without emotional contagion, right? Just as an add-on to that, Mr. Jane, when you say you thought about it, Ralph Waldo Percy, just for my clarity, when you say you thought about it, was that the question that you thought about, or you thought to add that quote in? As soon as we get that covered, then we'll go into it. Compassion activates the ventral striatum and the medial OFC. I always phrase it like that because there is a UFC fight in my head every time I'm in that part of the palace. It's the promotion of altruism. It's the promotion of altruism without personal distress. Okay, Mr. Jane's confirmed. Well, so we'll come back to my final point on compassion, and we'll take Mr. Jane's question. How could you know if you are a genius without showing it? The question is again, it's rooted in whether you need to show you are a genius. Does it matter? Right? If you lean into that too far, it's egoic, and it's feelings driven, and it's connected towards empathy. It's confidence is fine, arrogance not so much, because those are emotional properties. Confidence has control, arrogance does not. You know. So I would look into that question. How could you know if you are a genius without showing it? If other people deem your work to be genius, fine. If other people deem your work not to be genius, fine. What matters is the effect that it's having. That's what matters, right? Is the effect of your work helping or harming? To be simplistic. If it's harming, do something else. If it's helping, you're doing fine. Right? The notion of genius connects to IQ testing, connects to the kind of less structured approach of understanding how clever someone is or not. Right? I did a video on the body language of Paris. I think he's well, still he is still in prison, but the whole thing was that he has a genius level IQ, and I was talking about something similar. I might not have elucidated it properly, but I was talking about something similar, and I mentioned what my own had come out as. And the number of comments you get, oh, I see this guy jumps at every opportunity to reference his IQ, whereas my IQ in that particular point wasn't what I was trying to kind of bring to the front. It was more to highlight that it doesn't matter. Right? The IQ isn't a drive for work. The genius or not isn't a drive for work. Right? It is at least in my experience, and my experience only. Aaron. Well, as a side note, let me put Aaron's comment on screen so everyone can see. The first place I heard it was on Pete Holmes's podcast. Pete Holmes is a comedian I like, and he was having a big conversation with Chris Evans, of all people. And yeah, until then, I'd read about ego for years, but I'd never read about something as having egoic properties, and it fit really nice in my vocab. So I was like, I'm stealing that. But that's where I got it from. Anyway, if that's any use to you. But that Mr. Jane is how I would. That's how I would answer the question. That's the fairest way I would look into that. The notion of whether it's genius or not doesn't really matter. Is it working? Right? Is it working? So we'll come back to this compassion, and we'll get through this quite quickly. I'm trying to think of a Holmes quote for this. You have, you have a gift for silence, Watson. Makes you quite invaluable as a companion. Uh, you can interpret that as Holmes's ego or not, but you can also interpret that as Watson's compassion for Holmes in allowing this brain to run and do his own things, and he offers compassionate silence. If if again, if we take Paul Bloom's work as impetus for this, empathy's spotlight narrows judgment. Compassion is scalable. It is sustainable, right? Be tolerant with others and strict with yourself. Marcus Aurelius. That part of my palace is full, right? Compassion is it's it's an active concern. It's not a leak of emotion of any kind. Compassion is actionable. I can be I can be compassionate to anyone, and I like to show compassion to some pretty disgusting individuals. But that's just because I need to decode what it is that they are showing me without drowning in emotion, right? So it is support without self-sacrifice. Too often, empathy is led by the ego. I need to be in here because I can help. I feel this. I'm such a feelings-based person. This situation might not need you at all. Right? There are downsides to this leading through empathy first the whole time, and it's something I want to make you aware of. So yeah, if you've got any questions around it, drop it in the comments when this goes out live tomorrow. If you're watching this tomorrow, as in Friday, then just drop it in the comment section. We'll get to it. Who knows? Maybe we'll call back to it in separate podcast episodes. But yeah, lean into this value of tactical compassion. Read Paul Bloom's work. It's wonderful. It's wonderful. Empathy, Aaron. Empathy spotlight narrows judgment. Excellent. There's a scripture that says judgment before mercy. We have to evaluate and think before allowing the self to be moved emotion. 100% we do. 100% we do. So yeah, again, if you've got anything out of this, let me know. If it's helped, if it's challenged, if it's brought new light on some problems that you could tackle with your observational work, I'd love to hear from you. And above all, make sure you are staying in touch with the 100-day mental upgrade. Day 24 is going to be going live very soon, and we're posting one tip every day for 100 days on how you can develop and nurture your brain's capacity for information, and how to navigate your way through that minefield that is so huge and so vast. Make sure you stay in touch with that. And for those who haven't joined the community, you'll find the link in the description again when this goes out live. This is the type of stuff we do all the time. If you're looking to develop this as far as it can possibly go, right? AI fails, tech dies, battery runs out. This is forever. So let's learn to nurture this first and develop this to allow you to excel in whatever it is that you're doing. Just consider checking it out. There is a free trial involved, so you can take the free trial and make your own judgment from there. But yeah, with that in mind, guys, it's a pleasure to see you. Thank you, Aaron. And we'll see you all next time. All right, guys. 2 weeks, don't forget. We're every fortnight on the podcast now. And until then, I'm going to love you and leave you. All right, guys. See you later. Bye-bye.